It's Causeway Coast Radio, and I am now joined by Katie Watts from MoneySavingExpert.com. Good afternoon, Katie.
Good afternoon.
So with this global pandemic, people are very rightly concerned about their finances. The government have announced several protections to workers, including a furlough. Firstly, what exactly is a furlough?
So this is the coronavirus job retention scheme. The government has effectively handed the welfare state to employers to enact. When you're on furlough, your job is effectively put to sleep. So you don't work for that employer for the time being. And while that's happening, the government will pay your employer a taxable grant to cover 80% of your salary up to £2,500 a month. Now, the way they calculate that is your salary as it was on or before the 28th of February payroll. And the government says that the reason for that is to avoid sort of fraudulent claims for this furlough money. Now, an employer can top that up to 100% if they choose to, but the government will only cover the 80%. It means that employees can sort of stay in work and stay above the breadline on a healthy income while this crisis is ongoing.
Okay, and what happens if you're on a 0-hour contract?
So if you're furloughed on a 0 hours contract, or if you have irregular hours, so you might be a supply teacher or you might be a childminder working for an agency, the HMRC has come up with a way to make sure that you get a fair representation of your income. So it will be the higher of these two things. Number one, your earnings in the same month the previous year, or number two, your average earnings over the 2019-20 tax year. So hopefully, if that's you and you're on a 0 hours contract, you'll get the most that is possible when you're being furloughed, and then 80% of that should be fair compared to your normal income.
Okay, and are you able to accept additional work whenever you are furloughed?
So you're not allowed to accept additional work for your employer, but there's nothing in the rules that says that you can't work somewhere else. So it depends on what your contract with your employer is. Now, you have to agree to be on furlough. Like, they can't just put you on it. You have to agree to it. So if you do agree a furlough, then it's worth looking through and seeing what your contract or what your letter of furlough says. It may have that term in it, don't work for anyone else. If you sign it, then that's going to have to be the way things are. But, you know, if you are on a fairly low income and 80% doesn't turn out to be very much, it disproportionately affects you, then it may be possible for you to maybe take shifts doing key work.
What about the self-employed? Are you eligible for help if you're self-employed at the minute?
So there's a separate scheme that the government has set up to try and help people who are self-employed. It's called the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme. Similarly to the employed help, it will cover 80% of your average profits up to £2,500 a month. So there's a couple of ways that it's different. Number one, you could technically work if you are self-employed and pick up the income support. So if you've got maybe low work, but you haven't completely stopped, then that is possible for you to do. But then the other side is, if your annual profits top £50,000, then you get nothing at all. So there's a massive cliff edge. Whereas with the employed scheme, if you earn more than £2,500 a month, you'll still get the support just up to £2,500. So there are ways that it's better, there are ways that it's worse. It's an attempt to equalise the system for the employed and self-employed, but on both sides there are people who sadly fall through the gaps.